Welcome to Occult of Personality, esoteric podcast extraordinaire at occultofpersonality.net. I'm your host, Greg Kaczynski, and your co-host is Rudolph Berger. Occult of Personality podcast is available on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, Acast, TuneIn, and all the best podcast apps. This is episode number 179, featuring an interview about the Flambeau Noir International Left-Hand Path Conference 2017 with hosts Helene Oates and Justin Dickie. Occult of Personality podcast is made possible by you, the listeners, and by the subscribers to the Occult of Personality membership section, as well as our patrons who participate via the Occult of Personality Patreon campaign. Occult of Personality podcast is also sponsored by Miskatonic Books, an online store that focuses on the esoteric, occult, ceremonial magic, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, witchcraft, the Golden Dawn, as well as dark fantasy, classic horror, and supernatural fiction. They carry books by all your favorite esoteric publishers as well. Just visit miskatonicbooks.com. Temple of Thelema is a true outer order of the greater mysteries, providing ceremonial initiation, structured training, and regular group work, all in conformity with the principles of the Book of the Law. An investment of time, effort, and commitment is expected from each member. Each is expected to aspire fervently to the great work, to dare, with courage undaunted, to perfect that work, and ever to apply his or her best effort to effect harmony within the order and within the world in general. Founded in service to the AA, College of Thelema seeks to guide the student to an understanding of the law of Thelema. Most especially, this means a deeper understanding of oneself and of one's true will. A combination of instruction techniques is employed, including seminars, written texts, and individual work. For over 40 years, College of Thelema has published journals in the Continuum and Black Pearl, as well as several books on occult subjects maintaining high standards in Thelemic education. Visit Temple of Thelema at www.thelema.org. Now, in episode number 179, Helene Oates and Justin Dickie join us to discuss the upcoming Flambeau Noir International Left-Hand Path Conference 2017 that they're hosting, which takes place in Ottawa, Canada, the weekend of April 28th through 30th. Helene and Justin, thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure to speak with you.
It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you.
Now, you were two of the hosts of the Flambeau Noir International Left-Hand Path Conference for 2017, and that's really the reason we're talking today. Maybe we could begin by just giving people a little bit of the background on the conference. Where is it? When is it taking place? How can people get tickets and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. The conference is being held in Ottawa, Ontario. The dates are from the evening of the 28th of April, which is a Friday evening, and then we're going all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And the tickets, best place to go for that would be to the website, which is flambeaunoir.com, and that has all of the information for the hotel as well as the tickets.
Excellent. Thank you. How many years has this conference gone on?
It started back in 2012, and then they skipped 2013 Started back in 2014, and then there was the one in 2016, and now this one. The places that have hosted them are Toronto, Atlanta, and
somewhere else in the States.
Yeah, in Georgia as well, I believe.
Thank you. Helene, maybe each of you could give us a little bit of a background, who you are, as much as you want to talk about with our listeners, just to give us an idea, because people may already be familiar with you, but I'm sure some people listening are not.
Yes, absolutely. I'll just talk a little bit about my primary influences. I think, after a 30-year journey in the occult, I've really come to the primary influences of Temple of Set and Thelema. I'm also a practicing astrologer, so that's had a big impact on the framework through which I view a lot of life experiences. In terms of other things that I'm involved in, I also write. So I've co-authored 2 books. One is called Conflict Resolution for Musicians, and the other one is called Conflict Resolution for Film and TV. And also working on a couple of other writing projects that will unfold next year, I would say.
Great. Do you want to mention Witch Hollow?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Witch Hollow is a very mysterious place. It's a property that I bought 3 years ago, and it was owned by a woman who had been living there for 40 years prior, and it was her covenstead. So as far as we know, it was the longest running covenstead in Canada. And then it also spawned, was the birthplace of what is now the largest pagan festival in Canada. So it started on that land as well. So, you could say that the land and the premises have been soaked with all kinds of magical and, pagan energy over the past 40 years. And then when me and my family and various friends, including, of course, Justin, started to work with it, then that lent a little bit of another flavor to it, a little bit more of a darker flavor.
And Justin, what about you? What's your background?
Mine isn't as long. I'm currently a member in Dragon Rouge. Through there, I work a lot with the tantric things as well as the Kabbalah, the Cliff-Oath. But more my focus currently is on the runes and the Norse mythologies. I currently have a sound art project with one of the speakers called Obsidian Will.
That's Thomas Karlsson?
Well, Thomas Karlsson is the founder of Dragon Rouge, and my sound art project is with Lloyd Keane, who's another presenter. Yes.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. So you're a musician yourself, professionally?
Professionally, no. I'm in IT. And music has been just a way for me to express what I'm going through magically.
Interesting. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the importance you feel for having conference and space dedicated just for left-hand path practitioners.
Definitely. One of the big things that me and Helene spoke about, and that we've received from numerous amounts of people and the speakers as well, is that there needs to be more interaction sometimes, that we need to be able to be the isolate people that we are, but be able to come together to understand the different milieus that we're in and how they all correlate together to be able to continue on the paths that we tread.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's really important to do in this digital age is to actually spend some time together. It's so tough to find a place where you can go to where there are a variety of different viewpoints and practices. It's no problem going to a group that you're in. That's easy enough. But getting the diversity and getting it face to face that's the particular challenge, is getting it face to face. So we were both at the Left Hand Path conference in Atlanta last year, and I think one of the things that came out of that is we got to meet so many people, and it was really, really great. So when Lori Pneumaticus, who had run the Atlanta conference, put the offer out on the table, is there anybody who wants to take this up? Yeah, jump. We did it.
Well, I can certainly respect your initiative in grabbing the bull by the horns there.
It's very exciting to do this, but there's also an initiatory aspect to taking on this type of an endeavor. And there's also the what are you thinking aspect of it, right? Because there's risk involved, right?
Certainly.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if I may dig an inch deep into Greg's question, so yes, I see the practical reason why this kind of conference is necessary and you want to do it and you want to organize it. But why do a separate conference for the left hand? What's your background? What's your purpose to that?
That's a great question.
Yeah. As it started off with Jeremy Crow, who is our third co-host, it was to try and understand a lot of the different aspects that a lot of places don't always agree with philosophies such as Luciferianism or Satanism. And sometimes you just need a place for everyone to come together and to not be judged in a way just by sort of the philosophical label that you have and that you're pushing. So it was really to try and start getting a sort of a face or a place to be able to show that. And especially with Flambeau Noir, we have people from every walk of life. It doesn't necessarily matter, but what the point is to bring out that black flame, that creativity, that essence of being something more than all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we did have a brief conversation, the three of us at the beginning. Should we call it an occult conference, as opposed to left-hand path? So there was a discussion around that. And the thing is that, obviously when we use the word occult, it's so huge. What exactly do we mean by that? And, how do you narrow things down within that framework? Whereas with the left-hand path, it's much more specific philosophically, at least, right? And as Justin was mentioning, even within that stream of left-hand path philosophy, there's still a lot of misunderstanding. People don't necessarily know what, someone who's quote-unquote a Satanist is versus a Luciferian versus dark witchcraft, or even necessarily know what the draconian current means.
Yeah.
So it's a way to dig deeper into the specific philosophical framework of the left-hand path. Otherwise, it just gets too broad.
And if I understand you well, but please correct me if I don't, the common base of the left-hand path gives you also kind of protection because, you're talking about the same thing, knowing what it is and not being misunderstood towards other currents.
I would say, yeah, that'd be pretty close. It's kind of working with some of the finer points of the left-hand path, which could be things like antinomianism.
Subjective, objective universe, and working within those.
Yeah.
But, having said that, there will be people who are at the conference who don't know what these terms mean. So it's going to be a learning experience for them.
Sure.
I'd like to sort of explore this a little bit further because personally, I don't identify as left or right. And I think I generally, although I could be mistaken, I think I generally understand the approach and the philosophical underpinnings of the left-hand path, Luciferianism, Satanism, generally. But maybe you could talk about your own ideas about what separates these philosophies or currents or paths from something like Wicca or Thelema or esotericism, as defined by people like Renaissance figures, Ficino, Pico, who are generally seemed more interested in the sort of, the way they would express it is a true magic is to marry the world, which may not be all that different from your approach, but I'm curious about how you would discuss that.
I think one point to just make quickly first is not everybody who attendees, certainly, but not even speakers, actually wants to make that distinction between the right and the left-hand path. So there are some people who would not identify as either because they don't think that there should be a distinction. And there are some who would identify as both. So there's wiggle room there. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you.
I would say that one of the big things is the sense of being an individual, that we're coming with the understanding that everyone here is trying to understand themselves and to understand the world or the reality that we live in with what makes sense to them. There are so many philosophers out there that it's impossible to really study them all unless you take an entire lifetime. If you do that, do you even have time to find yourself? And I think that's an interesting topic, that it's coming from a different approach, that we need to look at ourselves first before we can look out into a community and understand who we are as individuals.
You know, another thing that if we're going to make the distinction, which I guess we have by labeling it a left-hand path conference, but if we're going to make the distinction, then, you know, you brought up Wicca, for example. And so this is a purely, only speaking for myself, not speaking for anybody else. There are some belief systems that are very much what they want to do is they want to communicate with the other, right? They want to become part of the universe or the all, or they want to communicate with gods and goddesses and receive help, receive assistance. And that would be the first thing that you would do if you were inclined in that direction. Whereas with the left-hand path, if you need help or assistance with something, first you go to yourself. Okay, and now I'm just speaking on behalf of myself here. I'm not speaking for the entire community, but that's a really big emphasis. It's about self-responsibility and self-determination and self-development and self-growth and all of that stuff. So in other words, becoming maximizing yourself as a human being and doing everything within your control to reach that. Does this mean that you can't or you don't communicate with other entities? Let's call it that way, whether they be gods, goddesses, demons, aliens, whatever. No, it doesn't mean that. But it means that your first piece of work that you're doing is on yourself. And then everything follows from there. So to me, that's one of the differences where instead of looking outside of the self for self-development and for help and for assistance and insight, enlightenment, it's the opposite. You're looking to yourself.
Thank you. That's a really important distinction, I think. And just as a follow-up, I'm curious because with the emphasis on individualism and self-reliance, which are certainly noble attributes without a doubt, how does the role of a teacher, how does that sort of fit into this paradigm?
We have to learn. We have to find patterns. That's how we are as animals. And so what we're trying to do as an individual is potentially find people who exemplify those. Not necessarily to learn from someone isn't something that's regarded as a bad thing. It's definitely needed, but it would be more of realizing that this person is also human, this person also has to learn. So you're trying to be an individual first and know that the other person is an individual. And from there, you're able to build up sort of nobility, a virtue between those people. As much as a master or a teacher teaches, he also learns from his pupils. And so it's a process of continually fine-tuning the self.
Yeah, and I think what you just mentioned, Justin, about we have to learn is such a good point, because that's right, we have to learn. So where is the best place to go to learn, right? There are a variety of options, and one of them is obviously and most certainly a teacher, right? Or a mentor or a coach. So I think what we're really saying is the distinction, though, is between a teacher, a mentor, a coach, and a guru. That's a different thing. Right?
Oh, absolutely. A very different thing.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the thoughtful answers. Is really helpful. not only for me, but I think for people listening, generally the idea of a guru implies an enlightened being. Is that generally something that's sought or valued or even possible from your point of view? Or would the possibility of something like that preclude somebody retaining their own individual self-reliance while still learning from them? Because my experience is when you encounter a person or being of that stature, it's really difficult to maintain your own mind stream, if you will.
Well, the thing is, an enlightened being necessarily needs a standard against which to measure that which we're going to call enlightened or not enlightened.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Right? Yeah. So I think the emphasis here more is not so much in terms of enlightened or becoming enlightened, but maximized and becoming maximized as a human being, So I would say, again, not speaking for the entire community, but I would say that I think the goal here is to maximize ourselves as human beings, not, though, necessarily to become enlightened, because that's a whole other discussion. Having said that, can you learn from gurus? Well, of course. We can learn from people who struggle horribly and have very difficult lives and are in poverty and are homeless. And we can learn also from people who are, quote unquote, self-described as enlightened. Everybody's our teacher in that respect.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, my pen name on Facebook is Narcisio John, so know yourself. Mm-hmm. And I'm like Greg. I don't define myself by either right-hand or left-hand path. How would you see the particularity of that know thyself, or maybe it is something else and not the know thyself in the first place, which seems to be part of many, if not all, esoteric schools as a first step? Where does the left-hand path start going in another direction than the other schools? At what moment, at what stage?
As a small little anecdote, in my apartment, I made myself just a simple black mirror. I just spray painted on the back of the glass. And on the frame, I put Temet Nuske, know thyself. Just to remind myself, and as a little picture to have on the wall. Where I start with that is of having an individual morality, of having individual ethics. So starting always with myself and understanding what that would mean in different situations. What I try to do is I try to dismantle everything that I've been taught my entire experience in my entire life, and to go with what I'm building myself up to be, and to use that as a guide instead of learning from scripture or from different books or different mediums and having them tell me. I'll read those things and I may agree with it, so then I have to ask myself that, do I really agree with it, or is there something else there? Is there something from my past that I need to look at? So it's about pulling back all the layers that's been put on us from the time of our birth, and even potentially before that, with our genes and biology, and then our ancestors and our culture, and how to be an individual through all of that. So it comes down to understanding what my philosophy is, what my ethics are. When I go outside, how am I going to present myself? And is that authentic, or am I being manipulated? Am I being manipulated emotionally through ads, or am I being manipulated because someone is being angry and that kind of throws off my day? How does all of that play in, and when am I myself?
Another element too But I don't think it's really a distinction necessarily. Maybe it's helpful to say that it's an expectation is that it all is followed with action, right? Whatever it is that we need to clean up in our own lives on the mundane level, that gets taken care of. Whatever we need to clean up psychologically, go to counseling then, right? It's also the whole action-oriented component of taking specific and deliberate steps when you know yourself, and that's absolutely where you need to be. But since you know yourself, what are you going to do about it? And I think that's a bit of an added flavor for at least the hardcore version of the left-hand path.
Mm-hmm.
I may be mistaken here, and I apologize. You correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things we haven't really talked about yet in terms of right versus left-hand path ideologies is generally, as far as I'm aware, I think of the right-hand path, I would think of a more aesthetic practice, more withdrawing from the sense world. Whereas on the left-hand path, I would generally associate that with more of a plunging in to the sense world, indulging even in sensuality in many senses, which would be a huge distinction. Is that at all accurate?
I would say that that's kind of accurate, and I'd say also on the right-hand path, it'd probably be a little more community-driven. So festivals are, let's say like the festivals that happen throughout the year, so the equinoxes and solstices are done to appease. They're done to
thank,
to
honor.
And that happens very much so in the left-hand path as well, but it starts from within and kind of delving into it. This is where things get blurry, because we could say, that the Greeks worshipping Dionysus with their orgiastic rites could be left-hand path, but they would be worshipping it. It would be from where the individual sees it, how they see it. Are they just doing it because that's the time period they're in and that's what they're expected to do? Or are they doing it because they want to and that they have a need for it? A need with like a capital N, so like the need fire, and then the nothis. It drives you to action. It drives you to help you along your path.
There's a piece too about, what you were asking about indulgence. And I think that indulgence does have a very important place on the left-hand path, and that it is potentially not as highly regarded from a right-hand path perspective. Once we get into indulgence, then we get into territory that goes into the shadow side, right? And into the abyss, and the stuff that might be told to us by our environment we shouldn't think, we shouldn't feel, we shouldn't do. I think there's a lot less judgment of that territory on the left-hand path because, again, it is part of know yourself, right? So it necessarily includes that territory, and not just knowing it, but exploring it and figuring it out and facing it, right? Whereas if you were to explore and figure and face it on the right-hand path, there may be folks who would look askance at that because, oh, how scandalous.
Yeah, we've been told not to do these things.
Yes, right,
yeah.
Right. Oh, well, that's dark, that's black magic, that's whatever.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
One thing that jumped at me when I saw it on your website, maybe also because it's part of my world I work in, is that the arts in general and artists in particular play an important role in your conference. So I also heard, Helene, that you were writing books about treating problems in the arts world, etc. Is the artistic world, or the arts world to be more precise, and the left-hand path, do you have a particular reason to bring the arts into your conference? Is there a deeper lying reason, or is it just because you think it's important to combine those expressions?
I would say that it's kind of ingrained almost. You have to find ways to express that action, as Helene said, of doing, of understanding yourself and putting that to action and being able to communicate that, of finding subtle ways of communicating and teaching, because that shows the process that you've gotten to a point where you've understood something and you're able to pass it along. Whether people pick it up or not, that doesn't matter. But if that gives them that little spark that makes them go on to something else, or comes up to you and asks you some questions, then that's what it's there for.
And in your experience throughout the years, that happens, that actually does help people to make a step further?
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Definitely. When you practice magic and stuff, weird things happen.
Sure.
Things happen where you don't know how to express it. So you can express it in different forms, or you can speak to people and that are of a like mind, or that you at least have a common ground with, and you can try to figure that out for yourself. The thing that you have to realize is that this coincidence is potentially just on your side because you're the one that's interpreting that reality. It could not be a coincidence for another person. It could be their normal, mundane life.
I had a question about antinomianism, which you mentioned earlier. Now, clearly that's something that can be valued, but there's also a flip side to it. And I don't want to name any names or bring up anything that you might not want to discuss about prior conferences. But at what point does any individual's antinomian inclinations cross a line, or is there a line? Because it seems like there is at some point, even for people who value antinomianism.
The thing is, we live in a reality, right? Mm-hmm. So, we can be the isolate intelligence that we are and, express our black flame, and antinomianism is how we walk through life, but we're not alone. And at least unless we isolate ourselves deliberately, we're always going to be in some kind of relationships, right? Relationships, personal relationships, community, social, work environment, etc. So for me, anyway, the crossing of the line is when certain actions or words repel the community that you're in. Now, if that's what you want to do, fine. But the question for me is that strategic? Is that smart?
Right.
Is this the outcome that you want? Are we going to get something out of that? Or is it just going to fall into disarray and conflict? Because when things fall into disarray and conflict, at least one of the reasons for that is that people have not thought about this strategically. They haven't thought about their intention, and they haven't checked to see whether or not it's going to create the impact that they're looking for. And sometimes they haven't even thought about the impact piece. So, there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction stuff around the crossing the line part that it's not helpful to anybody, including the person who crossed the line. And that's where I would say, well, that's not antinomianism. That's just, kind of dumb.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I appreciate that. That's a very thoughtful answer.
Yeah. My next question is much more a practical one, because I've attended several conferences in my life, be they occult conferences, be they professional conferences from my work side. And in my experience at those conferences, often the meetings around the speakers and everything is very good, very important, and your guests and your speakers are really great. But the real thing happens in the coffee breaks or around dinner table and afterwards and at breakfast, because people meet, practitioners meet. How did you experience that over the left-hand conferences? Is that the same? What would you tell potential visitors about that? What could they expect there?
One thing that I've always found is you don't want to judge a book by its cover. We see a lot of people in like the metal scene and stuff who are, all in black, they look very tough, but they're just people as well. If they're healthy people, they're going to be okay with you approaching them and having a discussion and understanding that we're all just people and we're here for a common reason, and an interaction can take place. And that's where this kind of helps, and that's where conferences help, is that everyone already knows what the common ground is. You just have to kind of get through the small talk. How I envision Flambeau Noir will be is that it's a nice small place. It's going to be nice and cozy for everyone to be able to just kind of stick around and be able to interact and help each other, but it may not necessarily be right away. It may be just be a word or two that you hear from someone on a chair or something over, and the words that you hear may come back to you a few months from now or something, and that helps you and that spurs you on further. Or you hear something from one of our lecturers and you need to find out more. So you go up to them and you ask them afterwards or something, or you ask someone else, you ask the person beside you and you ask them, oh, do you know about this? And then, maybe that ends up being a lifelong friendship.
Some of the ways that we've tried to incorporate or, to maximize that these things will occur for people. We're starting the conference off on the Friday evening with just spending time together, just some networking. And then Thomas Karlsson is going to lead everybody who's there through a ritual for probably a couple of hours. And so we're starting off right away with a bonding experience that is, beyond nice introductory sort of networking, and then, okay, let's get into it, let's do something together that's very profound and meaningful. The other thing that we've built in is during the first day that there will be a workshop done by Lloyd, Keane. I don't want to give too much away, but we're going to be doing some art together. We'll just put it that way. And then the Saturday evening, we're going to all take a nice long walk down the canal together, because it's a beautiful part of the city, and it's a heritage and Canada's capital and all that good stuff. So we're just going to go for a good walk together, and then end up at a restaurant somewhere. We also have something planned along the same vein with the other things that I mentioned for the Sunday morning. So the Sunday morning, again, I won't give away too many details, but we're going to do a church service. The way it should be done.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of these are experiences that people will have that are not, sitting down and listening, although that's going to be awesome, but they're going to be experiences together. And we'll wrap things up with a panel discussion on morality, the issue of morality within the left-hand path. So again, more opportunities to talk together and learn from each other.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing event. Rudolph and I were speaking beforehand and mentioned the speakers that you have assembled are really amazing. Some of the names you didn't already mention: Richard Kaczynski, Webb, Shani Oates, Nico, Mara-McKay, Jex Blackmore, and one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Crow. Some of very well-known names. Their work is tremendously popular. It's really a pleasure, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to help you promote the conference. So thank you very much for allowing us to do that.
Oh, the pleasure is ours. We really, really appreciate this support. It means a lot.
I know when you got in touch, I didn't have any hesitation. I was wanting to do it, and I know it. I had spoke with Craig Williams last year about the prior conference, and despite the fact that I don't identify myself in any particular way or form, I really think it's wonderful what you're doing, and the opportunity for people is amazing. If I were closer, I would definitely attend. I wish I were a little closer, but perhaps someday. But if for anybody who's nearby, you've got to go. I mean, it's just too much to miss. I think it's such a great opportunity to hear so many great speakers, and as you mentioned, there's going to be a lot more than just lectures and presentations going on. So I think anyone who could should definitely check it out.
Yeah, and Ottawa is a lovely place on top of it.
It is. Yeah, we really encourage anybody to go to.
Sure.
Okay, people, there are 40 tickets left.
Oh, that's not much at all.
So come and get them quick.
Again, the place to find those tickets are at flambeaunoir.com, or you can find us on Facebook, and there's links there.
Great. Well, Helene and Justin, I really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks again. And
thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thanks to both of you so very much. We really, really appreciate this opportunity.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Thank you, and
you.
Best of luck to you with the conference. I'm sure it's going to be a smashing success.
And let us know how it went.
I'd like to remind you that although you're able to listen to this podcast at no charge, the costs to produce it are significant. Your financial contributions ensure the continuity of the free podcast. Please support Occult of Personality by joining the membership section at occultofpersonality.net/membership or our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/occultofpersonality. And if you're already supporting the show or have done so in the past, my heartfelt thanks, and I salute you. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.
know what you offer me, only this eternally. Love, love. I throw them all away. You shine when I see you. I smile it all away. You shine when I see you. I smile it all away. Is it useless? Don't throw it all away. Is it hopeless? Is there nothing